There were certainly high expectations for the Houston Texans heading into this 2024 season, and it was fair to have them, right? You had C.J. Stroud coming off of a tremendous, you could really say like historic level rookie season performance. This massive turnaround for this organization for what they had been the previous few years to what they showed you in 2023 was incredible, right? And a big piece of that was C.J. Stroud and his performance at the quarterback position. And you had a young team with flexibility, a young team with some core talent. C.J. Stroud, Nico Collins, Will Anderson Jr., need I go on, Derek Stingley, right? And you mix in a coach of the year level guy in DeMeco Ryans. Yeah, like, makes sense. You felt like maybe the Bills are taking a step back. Like, Texans have a pretty easy path in their own division. Like, yeah, it absolutely makes sense to have decently high expectations for this team. And what's crazy to me about this is it's hard to say the Texans disappointed. It's hard to say that they regressed, but they really didn't progress, right? Is that fair to say? I just felt like it was pretty much a repeat of the previous season. They finished 10-7. They won the AFC South. They dominated within their division. They were 5-1, which, hey, if you want to win the division, get a home playoff game to start. Handling business within your own division is a pretty good place to be. They won a playoff game, and in this case, they dominated the Chargers in the wild card round 32-12. And it was amazing. Like, that game really wasn't close, right? That was an ugly performance for Justin Herbert, an ugly performance for Jim Harbaugh. Like, the Texans pushed their shit in. There's no other way to sugarcoat that. But then you get to the division round and you're like, hey, this team that we're seeing play the Chargers shows up against the Chiefs. Like, the Chiefs could be in some real trouble here. And it wasn't exactly an easy path in that game for the Chiefs, except eventually, like, the mistakes, the Texans just shot themselves in the foot too much, and they ended up losing 23-14. So, double-digit win season, division championship, playoff win, get beat by the Chiefs. It feels mostly like a repeat of the previous season. And that's interesting, right? Joe Mixon was brought into the fold as a free agent. I think he had a solid year, certainly had an impact on them in terms of balancing out their offense. Nico Collins, when he was healthy and in the lineup, he played like the stud that he's been. But it definitely felt like C.J. Stroud took a step back. And, you wonder how much of that is really he took a big step back versus, hey, the players that he was looking for to be a part of his support system, such as Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell and so forth, weren't there all year. Fair to say, right? But you got to figure out a way to make it work. I mean, you wonder how much of that was play calling. Well, it felt like quite a bit of it was play calling because Bobby Slowick, a guy a year ago that was getting some play in consideration for a head coaching opportunity, was fired as the Texans offensive coordinator. It's an interesting thing, and it just shows you how quickly life can come at you, right? And how quickly things can change. But it's like the way we talk about C.J. Stroud in 2024 was like he went from being a future and elite quarterback to being a future bust, which just feels like too extreme to say, right? And I would even say, like, when you look at the playoffs, when you look at his performance against the Chargers, like, you tell me who was the better quarterback on the field in that game. It certainly wasn't Justin fucking Herbert. It was C.J. Stroud, and probably by a good distance. Like, yeah, he took a step back statistically from 2023. That's true. I think it generally didn't play quite as well as he did in 2023. But it wasn't that much of a drop-off, that much of a regression. And like I said, what you saw in the playoffs like should give you some hope for the future and still convince you that the Texans have their long-term guy in C.J. Stroud. So key there. Defensively, they had a good season, 6th in yards allowed, 14th in points allowed. Daniil Hunter was a key signing for them, and he paired up with Will Anderson Jr., and they were a really dangerous combination off the edge, and you saw this in the playoffs too, right? Especially Will Anderson Jr., like, what a freaking beast he's been. Derek Stingley finally played up to his draft position, which is great for them to see. You've got some real marquee key stars at premium positions a lot of teams wish they could have. So, good season overall for the Houston Texans. Yeah, I thought like this could be a team that maybe makes the AFC Championship game. They ultimately didn't. I thought this was a team that would be positioned to potentially beat the Chiefs. They got their shot and they shot themselves in the foot too much. And it happens. Now, as you go into this off season and you're kind of in this spot for the Texans, hiring have a new offensive coordinator, right? But you're up against the salary cap, so it kind of limits your flexibility. It also makes you wonder, like, should you already be up against the salary cap when you've got C.J. Stroud still on a rookie scale contract? Did you truly go all in? Like, where are you spending all of this money? It's a fair question, right? You got free agents like Stephon Diggs and Robert Woods. Like, are you going to re-sign either or both of these guys? Maybe, maybe not. But this feels like a team that, weirdly enough, is up against it from a salary cap standpoint. I don't know how you get there. And with some sizable needs in this offseason. And number one of those, I think, is wide receiver. Nico Collins is a stud. Tank Dell, when healthy, is a weapon. But boy, that when healthy is a really big what if scenario, right? If he's healthy, then he makes a difference. If he's not healthy, he can't make a difference. It feels like you want to get another receiver there to help CJ Stroud have the type of weaponry around him that he needs. And then I look at that offensive line. Like, this is a team that really needs to address the interior of that line. Like, if you feel great about Larry Tunsil and Titus Howard, whatever. But the interior of this offensive line is kind of similar to the Bears, right? Like, it's not good. It's pretty bad. And do you really have faith in any of these guys? Jarrett Patterson, Juice Scruggs, any of them, that they're going to be competent level starters at the NFL level? I certainly would not at this point, and I wouldn't take that chance. So this is a team I would expect to invest multiple draft picks on the interior of that offensive line, and they need to. Left guard, center, right guard, like build through the trenches, right? Especially since you've got your quarterback. You've got to keep your quarterback healthy. And the way to do that is to better protect him. Especially with the type of play style that CJ Stroud has. It is much more pocket based. It doesn't mean he can't make plays with his feet. It doesn't mean that he can't move at all. It just means that's not the biggest part of his game, and nor do you want it to be. He's most successful when he can stand in the pocket and he can pick you apart. In order to do that, he needs to have the type of protection directly in front of his face that isn't getting pushed back into him all the time. Got to beef up that offensive line. And then I would say doing something to address the interior of their defensive line. Like, for a lot of teams, they need to improve their trenches. The Texans are certainly one of those teams. We'll see how this offseason plays out. It still feels like the Texans will be in a spot next year where they can win their division, but the real question is going to be like, not can they win their division and can they make the playoffs, but are they going to be able to find some special sauce here that helps them take another step and progress forward? And maybe that step forward and progression comes from another year of defensive continuity, helps your defense play even better. Hopefully for the Texans, that year of continuity on the offensive side of the ball, where you've helped give CJ Stroud a little more help on that offense, is the thing that you need to put you over the top.